It's incredibly robust. So how did Parashara learn astrology? Well, he learned it from the same source that we learn our spiritual knowledge. It was passed down from Lord Brahma. Remember, Brahma is the demigod, the co-creator demigod in the Lord of Passion. So Shastra, based on Brahma's teachings, is always going to be very accurate, because after all, he's the one that determines all the planetary alignments and the orbits and the solar system and the structure of the universe and the whole thing. So basically, he received his wisdom from Brahma by disciplic succession, which is the way that Vedic knowledge is passed down. And because of that, this Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra is amazingly accurate. If you do predictive work or analytical work according to the knowledge in BPHS, you just get incredibly great results. I'm so impressed with it. Strangely enough, even though there are many different programs, Vedic astrology programs on the market, or even available for free, open source and like that, none of them strictly follow BPHS. This has always been something very strange to me. I don't really understand it. You know, why people... Instead, they follow later authors who wrote commentaries on BPHS. And that's not the Vedic way. It's like if somebody else is writing and they contradict something that Parashara says, by the process of disciplic succession, we would take the earlier author to be more correct. If some later author, because we know that since the time of Parashara, human intelligence has decreased, not increased. The Vedic model is a model of devolution, not evolution. So we know that that people in Parashara's time were much more intelligent than we are today. Therefore, in general, the principle is we take their word for it. Okay? And actually, I did a test on this. When I compiled my astrology course on our online site, I used BPHS exclusively. And I did a case study. I took one person's chart and I did a complete analysis according to BPHS. And the person that I picked was Lord Chaitanya, who is the divine incarnation who is situated in our lineage only 500 years ago. And the chart that I came up with and the analysis that was generated by following BPHS was exactly spot on. I mean, there was not one reading that wasn't perfect. You know, it was just amazing. So I had to ask myself, well, why don't people just follow BPHS? Why do they do all this speculating and adjusting and, you know, tweaking to try to get it to work right? It already works right. You know, what are they talking about? Yeah, well, yeah, you're right, Florian. It's mental concoction. It's, you know, they're trying to think, well, we know better. Well, we've seen that before in ISKCON. We know better than Prabhupada. We don't have to follow his management instructions. So whenever that happens, it leads to disaster. And right now, the Vedic astrology scene in the West, especially, but even in India, is just a madhouse. I mean, it's just a disaster area. It's horrible because they're not following BPHS. They're following their own idea. And basically, their idea is that we want to use astrology to answer people's material questions. You know, like who's going to win in the stock market, or you know, what is the political scene going to do, and how things are going to work out in the world, in the material level. But that's not what astrology is for. In the Vedic system, astrology is for understanding a person's character and their karma. It's for understanding their spiritual position and how they can adjust their material position for the maximum spiritual benefit. It's not designed for what we call mundane astrology, or predicting what's going to happen in the material world. That is considered, you know, very, very secondary to answering our questions about our spiritual position. So if that's what the Jyotish system was designed for, if we try to apply it to something else, of course we're going to have to tweak it and adjust it and you know, futz around with it and patch it up and try to get it to work because we're trying to do something it's not designed for. You know, it's like using a wrench as a hammer. You know, a wrench is not a hammer. And if we use it like that, sooner or later we're going to damage the tool. And this is exactly what's happened. The practice of astrology has become very much damaged. And now the astrologers are fighting with each other, basically trying to fix the blame. You know, but it's really their fault. Because when we use BPHS according to its original intentions, its original application, it works perfectly. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is that people are trying to do astrology instead of as a spiritual practice, a Vedanga, a limb of the Vedas. They're trying to make it into a business. They are trying to, make a livelihood by being an astrologer. But what is the first thing that Parashara says about astrology? He says you have to be a qualified Brahmana. You have to be, in other words, a properly initiated Vedic priest following all the principles of Vedic life, and you have to be, your consciousness has to be on a spiritual platform. That's what a Brahmana is. A Brahmana is a knower of Brahman. So you have to be a Brahmana to practice Vedic astrology. Well, what are these guys doing? They're not following the principles. They're not initiated by a bona fide spiritual master. They might be initiated by some Jyotish guru or something like that. But they're not chanting, they're not studying the Vedas, they're not trying to elevate their consciousness. They're trying to make money. Basically, it's the mode of passion has taken over. So whenever you take something that is meant to function in the mode of goodness, and instead you bring it into the mode of passion, well, what's going to happen is it's going to generate problems. You're going to create problems that you didn't have or that you really didn't need. Because you're taking a tool and using it for a different purpose than it's actually designed for. So this is what's happened to astrology. Astrology has become, what is it? Linda Lovelace's Love Notes. Or the teen astrology page of the day, That's not what this is about, people. So astrology, in short, has become perverted. Even Vedic astrology in the West, the way it's practiced, has become like a big commercial thing. So really, astrology, like yoga, has no meaning if we take it out of the context of the Vedic lifestyle and spiritual advancement and the whole process of spiritual life and like that. To make astrology work, it has to be in relationship with God. And if people just want to use it for mundane purposes, they're going to ruin it. And Parashara warns against this. He says, this astrology science should not be taught to a person who is materially oriented, rascal, tricky, who doesn't respect his elders, who doesn't respect the guru, or who is dishonest. Okay? So that's the problem. The people who are practicing astrology don't meet that criteria. Instead, they're trying to make it into a business. They're trying to profit from it. But it shouldn't be for profit. It should be as a gift something that we give to people, wisdom that we give to people to help them perfect their lives. So in other words, to practice astrology outside of the context of making spiritual advancement is fundamentally prohibited in the Vedas that deal with astrology. So when we see what's going on in the astrology scene today, it's no wonder they're having problems. They're not really following Parashara, the original astrology guru. They're following some different process. They're looking at astrology in a completely different way. And I spent hours in our astrology course, in the videos, ranting about this, so I'm not going to spend much more time on it. But I just wanted to say that one of the projects that we're working on, and hopefully